here today because I really love, by invitation, but also to really listen and learn about the connection between research, evidence-based innovation, but how do you put it on the ground, and how do you then, I guess, go to that supply chain of knowledge, but have very much been welcomed throughout my time in this role, just into the issues that are affecting all sectors of the agriculture area, and very happy to be here amongst the dairy industry.
Good stuff.
Thank you.
Thanks again, Alison, for being brave enough to step up. As we've already discovered through our first catch-up last week, there are issues and opportunities that transcend dairy, right? So, again, that'll be a nice lens that you'll bring across to us. Michael Perrich, you're no stranger to the DRF stage. Nice to have you back. Tell us a bit about yourself for those who aren't so familiar.
Thanks, Greg, and thanks to the DRF for inviting me on the panel today. For the last 5 years, I've been CEO of Newby Limited, which we do take in about 250 million litres of milk. Prior to that, was directly involved in the family dairy operations, where I'm third generation dairy farming, and together across the group today, we're milking close to, in excess of 17,000 cows across the 3 different operations. I look at the opportunity that I've got at the moment with being at Newby, it's given me a different perspective across the supply chain up until it hits to the customer. So I think that's really helpful around, especially this conversation about where we want to go as an industry. And I think we've got an industry here that is well supported. I think the room today shows that there's a lot of people here, and there's a lot of people interested in how do we take dairy further. It is a product that I call it a superfood. It's one of those foods that is naturally occurring that meets a lot of the nutrient requirements that people are looking for, and the developing countries that we supply into are looking back at countries like Australia and saying, I want to be tall like you, I want to be healthy like you. I see that as a protein. So they go from rice grain up through to dairy. They look at meat, but they know that's a long pathway. But here in Australia, times we take it for granted that we've got milk on the table all the time, and it's in abundance. So really looking forward to the conversation about what's holding us back.
Good stuff. Thanks a bunch, Michael. Again, someone who is no stranger to the stage at DRF. Jane Sherborne, for those who don't know you, tell us a little bit about yourself.
So I've obviously been someone that's prepared too much, so I'm just going to follow my phone here. I'm the current president of the Dairy Research Foundation, sitting next to the past president of the Dairy Research Foundation. In the past, I've also been a board member on Dairy New South Wales, as well as the chairman for a period of 7 years. And during that time, they've made me work hard with the Dairy Australia, with industry advocates, processors, retailers, politicians, scientists, research bodies, government bodies, and fellow dairy farmers. I've enthusiastically supported cows' careers for over 20 years, and I've worked 30 years on my family farm business with my husband Grant and my children Georgia, William and Samuel. We operate in a peri-urban part of the Southern Highlands, and I am the 7th generation dairy farmer. My children are the 8th, and hopefully there'll be many more generations to come. For me, dairy farming is personal, not just because it has helped support many generations of my family and friends, but what it does for everyone else. I've also worked in education, retail, health and well-being. And when thinking about success in each of these industries, I know that it comes down to positive energy, understanding issues, and creating trust through actions, not simply words. So to make things interesting, when I'm out in town for dinner, I like to order a glass of milk. And when they question my drink order, I happily tell them I'm a dairy farmer. I enjoy seeing their surprise and then their curiosity to see more. I'm passionate about dairy. To me, dairy farming is more than just a job, and milk is more than just a drink. There's my glass. Cheers.
Thanks, Jane. We appreciate the applause because, again, it just helps settle these guys into what is not their normal space. Speaking of prepared, and we're about to move into our very first question, what's holding dairy back? One of the panellists, who shall remain nameless, sent me 5 pages of notes when I asked for a summary. How fantastic is that? Again, quick round of applause acknowledging the skills and experience and knowledge sitting on the stage, if you could. Righto, let's take a bold step forward. Mike Jeffrey, we might come back to you. What's holding dairy back?
Thanks, Greg. Look, I think there's a whole raft of issues that anybody could point to, and everybody's going to have a different opinion. I think if we look at what the industry actually has and look at some of the positives and how we can better apply those positives, that's a key measure to look at moving forward. I think the way that we portray the industry in public is really important, and everybody in the room's got a role to play in how they promote the industry to public, because public perception of our industry is really important. I think one of the big things that we've identified at Norco, a couple of years ago, we were able to successfully recruit a large volume of milk to meet growing demand. We've had that growing demand continue, and when we look at what the brand has done and what we think we'll need going forward, we started to look at where is the milk going to come from. And being a cooperative, we wanted to invest in the industry and in our members, and that's when we started to look at programs to address some of those issues. And one of those is around succession, and not just the succession of the family farm, but also we looked at the next generation, where the next generation of farmers were going to come from, where the milk was going to come from, and what needed to be done to support that. So we're really keen to provide opportunities for our members to address some of those concerns that we identified.
Good stuff, Mike. And as Chair of Norco and also a dairy farmer on the floodplains yourself, the environmental challenges over the last couple of years have been significant, mate. Tell me a bit more about how you see that affecting not just your own business, but the industry in the north as well.
Yeah, that's been a really big factor over the last couple of years. We think back to 2021, the events of 22, and then obviously earlier this year, it's had a dramatic impact in a number of areas, the flooding I'm talking about. And what we normally see is, as farmers, we're incredibly resilient, and people hang in there for a while. But we've really got to think about, and ultimately, some people do leave the industry, unfortunately, maybe a bit prematurely. The reason why that normally happens is because there isn't another generation there that's willing to take it on. I've got 2 daughters on the farm myself, and one of those daughters, the eldest, has brought a fiance back with her as well. So they look at what we've been through as farmers and the challenges that we've had, and we've really got to be mindful as we move forward how we address some of those issues and basically make dairy sexy again, basically, to overcome some of those difficulties like those natural disasters.
Totally. So reinvigorating what has been really challenging times right on the farm. Yep. Good insights, mate. Really appreciate those. As I mentioned, as many of you are already, feel free to pop your questions, comments, thoughts. It might be in support of something someone on the panel says. It could also be a question of the panel. Again, if we have time, we will come to some of those. This is fantastic insights for us to gather as we move forward through this space. Right, Mr. Tate, we heard a little of some of the challenges that you face, both from a personal and family perspective, but also the business. At times, when I visited you out on farm, it felt like you've just done it in your stride. I'm sure that's not quite the case. Is that right, Karen and Phil? It's not quite the case. But you guys just seem to confidently rise to the challenge and work forwards. Dig a little bit deeper into some of those challenges that you guys have faced through your business transition.
Well, I suppose one of the biggest things we've got a hurdle with now, we've got man-made climate change. road from us, we've got a new 6,000 house subdivision, which is being built as we speak, and because we're at the Macquarie regulated floodplain, we receive all the water from that area of the world down to our farm. So and we have a man-made climate change. So that's going to be our next challenge. We've gone from virtually a rural area to residential, and we did have our next door neighbour's place leased for the last 15 years, but they went up for tender and we were unsuccessful winning that tender for buying the property, so we've lost 70 hectares to a developer. So, and we're talking, like I said, 70 hectares. Well, they paid roughly $15 million for to purchase that land. So we're up against people outside dairy, agriculture in general. So it has been very challenging in those aspects. But we're looking forward. I've got two sons that are very keen to join us on the farm, and also a nephew. So yeah, I'm very passionate about that. So
Good to hear, mate.
Yeah, but looking forward, I think there's a very positive future for dairy. So let my sons join us. We've done financially really well out of dairy farming, following best practice. I suppose with the road coming through, we had to do a lot of analysis of our business and what our strengths were and what our weaknesses were, and we sort of drilled down and we could see a lot of positives in our industry. So I think the take-home message is be positive. Right?
So on that, outside of your own business, would you say one of the potential things that's holding the industry back is this understanding of their own business? Is this ability to analyse and explain the value? Because I'd imagine for you guys in particular, the fact that you could show the impact of this of the bypass on the business gave you a better position to leverage, right? As well as running a better business.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. Like when you're going to compensate for something, you've got to be able to prove that you're worthy of being compensated. So we drilled down through our business, and we found that some of the by benchmarking and various other things, we were achieving pretty good things out there in the industry. I'm not trying to blame Trump or anything, but we were doing all right. So
now's the time to blow, mate. So blow that trumpet for sure.
Yeah,
so
well, I was going to say one of the things that were key issues, I think, of our business is we focus on reproduction. That has a huge bearing on your business, and days in milk, cows in calf, and so you're not carrying a lot of cows that aren't producing milk. It's a lot easier putting a kilo of feed into a fresh cow than a stale cow. You're going to make more money out of a fresh cow than you are out of a stale cow. So that was probably one of the findings of what we're looking at, is a key driver of our business.
Gotcha.
And also, I suppose, relationships with various suppliers. So you have a constant supply of food for your cows to eat. So it's a very big thing out there for us. Yeah.
Good stuff. Before I let you off the hook though, two things. So if you hadn't have had a philosophy within the business of good business analysis, understanding the business performance, setting goals, those sorts of things, if you didn't have that evidence, where do you think you might have ended up through the negotiation phase with RMS and so forth?
I don't think we'd be in the position where we are now. We're able to build infrastructure to compensate for loss of dairy, land. So looking forward, because we're sort of under the microscope. They've built a road for our property which is raised up, so everyone's looking down on us, and we scratch ourselves. People tell us, so yeah. So we're very conscious of what people think, because we have to live there, and social media can be a big challenge for us. I suppose an example is we've got a Christian school beside us, and on social media they were complaining about the smell after we'd slashed the paddock. So you've got to be very mindful Oh, I'm serious. There was a lot of stories about me about the smell from us lashing the paddock. So, yeah. So you've got to be very conscious what the community are
100%.
thinking.
So my last question to you, with for those that are visiting the farm tomorrow, they'll see firsthand a business that I'd like to say has been through a revolution. But from a planning and policy perspective, tell us a little bit more about that. How easy or not has it been to not just be impacted by such a significant change to the business, but your family home as well, but then try and plan for the future, accommodate the needs of the changing environment around you, as well as the environment that you just had to exist in within dairy, as far as too hot, too humid, too wet, too dry, all those sorts of things. How's it been?
Well, it's been like I said, challenging, but you got to look at the positives. Like I said, I've got the next generation coming along, and if they've got something, like we've got a fair bit of technology on our farm now, so I'm first to admit I'm not capable of running some of it, but the next generation are. So we've got things in place that will encourage the next generation to go forward. And like I said, we're probably 100 kilometres south of our processor, so we can produce clean, green milk, because we've implemented other devices like solar panels and batteries to reduce our carbon footprint. So we're trying to be proactive than reactive. So one of our other challenges is, I suppose, we've got land on opposite side of the Calder Road, which people are going to traverse tomorrow. We need, because we've got 6,000 houses above us, they're all going to want to come down that road. So we're going to find a way of putting cows from one side of the property to the next, because we're in a grazing situation. Our DA won't allow us to be intensive farming, so we've got to work with what we have. So, and that we may have to try and look for an underpass of some sort to get us in a better position where we are now. So that's going to come down to negotiation. So.
Yep, for sure. Good stuff. And in the next round, we'll talk about opportunities moving forwards. Before we get to that, though, I suspect a toll booth or something on that road would work really well for you guys. But anyway, we'll chat about that later. Alison, we might let you have the last word in this round, so we might skip to Michael next. Michael, you've navigated no shortage of challenges in the dairy industry through your various roles. Give us a little bit of an oversight of the things that you think have been most challenging through that time.
Yeah, thanks, Greg. And I think in terms of what's challenging, I probably look a little bit around image there that we portray as an industry, and how do we make sure that we are promoting dairy to be a business that people want to be involved in, because it is wealth creating. A lot of people have done really well at it. It's not easy either, but we don't shy away from that. So some of the challenges there I see is the lack of unity and leadership across some parts of our broader industry. And I think we've got to really make sure that we are aligned, because unfortunately, if we are looking for support from government to help, if we don't turn up with a unified story, they cherry pick what they want to do, or they decide to do nothing. Yep. Because the industry's not aligned. And I think that's really a big thing about how do we actually create better alignment all the way up the supply chain, because how do we get the product from farm to the consumer's fridge? We're all part of that. So, and I think the margin spread that happens across that is important around where is the share. And I was actually just looking this morning, the Weekly Times had an article that talked about using what milk was originally, what cost, I think it was back 1975 they started, and I think it was 35 cents a litre back then, and using inflation it said it was $4.30 a litre today. We're at $1.65, $1.60 a litre now for milk. It is undervalued as a food product, and how do we create better relevance for milk and people wanting to pay for more? So it's actually making sure that we can communicate the virtues of dairy and then people are, it's a staple. People have it. We're one of the largest consumers of dairy across the world, and actually was driven a lot, quite frankly, from the coffee. The coffee market in Australia really drove the consumption of dairy. But up until you're 12 years old, everyone's drinking a lot of dairy as well. So I think the challenge is there. How do we create a more aligned industry across the whole of supply chain, unified, and making sure that we've got the image there that I hear too many farmers talk about. I was really pleased to hear Craig talk about his family and Jane as well. I've convinced my kids not to come and work back on the farm because, it's not really a profitable business, and I can't get anyone to work for me. Those stories are linked.
Surprise.
So I think there's a lot of opportunity there as well. So I think we've got to harness that opportunity to take the industry forward.
Beautiful. Thanks, Michael. Jane Sherborne, I suspect you've got some notes on this.
Absolutely. I've given this issue a lot of thought, and a lot of things have crossed my mind. But I believe it comes down to one simple thing. It's the story that we tell about dairy. Everyone loves a good story, but the one we mostly hear about dairy and the images we see is a simple person that is slow, has no technology or infrastructure, that operates with broken or old equipment. Once upon a time, when dairy was simple, farmers waited for the cows to come home, made hay when the sun shines, and stand around with a pitchfork in their hand. While that might be romantic or funny, it's not our story. There are many things out of our control, but our story is not one of them. We are myths and legends, and are rarely seen or understood by those that buy dairy. The questions they have go unanswered. They only see a glimpse of what dairy is. The skills of a modern dairy farmer go unrecognised. When dairy is in the news, it's usually when something goes wrong. And the news is only a glimpse of what dairy is. A newspaper article, social media, product promotions, or random searches for dairy are often clickbait. Something to make you laugh or cry or poke fun at. But this is not our story. If industry remains in decline, it'll be harder for farmer to find a dairy farmer with a positive story. Our risk is out of sight, out of mind. It's hard to create loyalty and trust if no one knows who you are. We can't blame others for telling our story if we are not willing to tell our own. Do we run away at the mention of factory farming? Or do we address it? Creating understanding and the purpose to improve animal welfare, productivity, safety in a changing climate? Or do we just ignore it? Or when bobby calves, dehorning, or downer cows are mentioned, what is our answer? Or do we think it's none of their business? We could do better. The story we need to tell is collaborative. Stories that are positive, proactive, and progressive. Our stories need to move forward, address issues that arise from stagnant attitudes. Our goals should be that of prospering together. Our stories need to be worth telling, not some old story that sees us down and out. We need to invest in the outcomes. We need a superhero version. Make it a bestseller. Our future is worth it.
Thank you, Jane. Rather insightful. And a bit for Alison to think about as you respond on the end of this question. And again, your lens, both from your experience in agriculture and the position you now hold, what's your sense on key challenges for dairy moving forwards?
Thanks, and I will try and digest what's just been said because it does all feed into a lot of the conversations I've been having around the state with various parts of the agricultural industry as well as with specifically in dairy. I think the issues affecting dairy, obviously there are people better in the room to comment really at a farm level, at a regional or a district level, at a state level, at a national level. So, you know, how you prioritise, you know, according to all of those layers and levels is really up to, again, back to the industry, to how do you manage that? Because, you know, we play in a global environment these days very heavily. I suppose I'll come back, and if I can just make a comment on the image, and I do think it's like any part of rural and regional Australia, there's a romanticised view of what it's like to live in the country, even the far west, all those sorts of things. Farming is, you know, romanticised still, and the realities have moved and have changed and all those other things. But I think, you know, if I think of other parts of, I guess, the primary industry sector, you know, Sam Kekovich, we're coming up to Australia Day in a few months' time, and the lamb ads, that presents a modernised view of, you know, the role of lamb in society almost. And the mining industry, they really put young engineers out there as well as, you know, earning dollars for Australia, but also planting trees. So I think that whole brand recognition, very strong brand, very strong trust in food safety and everything about dairy. You're coming off a good base, but you raise some amazing questions there. All of you do, but certainly there. If I can just probably lift back out of and look at it from a broader level, I think there are two things that challenge all parts of the agricultural industries, and I hope you can apply this to dairy yourselves and then speak to me over the rest of the day and while we're out tomorrow. But one is the rate of change, and we're hearing today that, you know, research and that supply chain of knowledge, which I kind of referenced earlier on, sometimes it's too slow, the adaptation. So what are the barriers to taking great evidence-based material and putting it on farm? Or the other way, what's the lived experience that can feed into the evidence base, and how do you connect those and those dots? But the rate of change, and both individual and sector-based, but also government's ability to keep up with the rate of change, and I am going to call out, you know, in regulatory frameworks, the modern regulator is different to how regulations were set in the, you know, in the 70s or the 90s. You know, we all remember how we first got our licences. If you're my age, you drove round the block and that was it. These days it's who's got young kids? You guys are learning to drive. 120 hours in rain, hail, shine, all sorts of things. So those sorts of things, I think, are implied across every industry. Sometimes we need to unpick some of the old regulations. Sometimes we just need to modernise it. But I just think innovation and adaptation of what some of the stuff we've heard today and we'll hear for the rest of the day will need a much more flexible or adaptive regulatory system. And having chaired a regulatory authority for 6 years, I know it is possible to look at the burden that your regulatory framework does impose on an industry, and then look within your current regulation and say what's within our control to try and modernise how we do that. COVID taught us all about remote auditing, all of those sorts of things. Real-time data analytics, AI, are actually going to hopefully improve those, I guess, those burdens about, you know, people who need to look over your shoulder. And I think the other part that I hear a lot, and it has been, you know, over the last 10 years or so, is the rise in the proprietary accreditation schemes and certifications. Needed for market access, many of them are really well intentioned, but there's just a lot of them.
There's an inherent time and investment, isn't there?
Each and every single one of them requires a separate audit, which is time, cost and money. And I know that has come up time and time again. I could leave it at that.
Oh, look, in the interest of time, I think that is excellent. Two things though. I spied a couple of really interesting comments up here I'm going to come to. At the same time, how good's that rain? Or about to be rain, I hope. And whilst I'm just pulling a question together for you, any questions for each other or comments to each other?
Just a
Go
quick comment. I think you made a really strong point there a moment ago about the public romanticising with dairy and agriculture. And I think we've been fortunate at Norco, being a 100% farmer-owned cooperative, to have a point of difference in the marketplace, and we've had tremendous growth, the fastest growing brand in dairy over quite a few years now. But that's the only reason is because it appeals to consumers, that farmer connection. And I think getting back to Michael's point about industry, the way, excuse me, the way industry's represented, if we've got a strong, united position to promote dairy, coupled with that desire that a lot of the public have to have a connection with the farm, or that they value the farm or where their food comes from, I think that's certainly not going to hold dairy back, and it's going to educate people in regulatory and government positions that'll ultimately assist the industry if we can capitalise on that.
Good stuff, and we'll segue into our next session about big, bold ideas to take us forwards. Before we do, though, just a sense of a few of the comments up on here about bringing the next generation into the dairy industry, whether that's new entrants or those within a family farm structure, and the challenges of equity, and there's commentary up there about land values and so forth. Who's got a thought on that? Jane, you multi-generation dairy farm yourself. It's a challenge, right?
Yeah, you have to make it worth their while coming into the industry. So I didn't want to farm the way my father farmed, nor my grandfather, and I'm sure my kids don't want to farm the same way we do. So we have to involve them in decisions and get their input, and just see what skills they have and what they're interested in, and try and make it suitable for them to go in it. And we have to learn to attract intelligent and capable people as well.
Yes.
And not just employ anyone that just knocks on the door.
Thanks, Jane. And your comments thunder through the room. Bad joke. Any other comments from the rest of our panel just about next generation, the challenge?
Yep, thanks, Greg. Look, this is a real big focus at Norco. As I mentioned earlier, a couple of years ago, we started a program that we loosely called Next Gen, until we worked out that there was a dozen other Next Gen programs in. It was a common phrase, but we thought we were pretty smart to begin with. But we identified that as being one of the big issues that was going to face our part of the world and our future supply of milk for the cooperative, and that involved a number of different areas. One was the next generation of farmers, so we started the conversation with our members around making sure that they had succession planning done and done properly, and we even found some that thought they had things organised, and they paid a lot of money for lawyers that ultimately it wasn't the way that they had hoped when they got a second opinion. So the succession planning thing is really important, and also around making sure the business structure and the business setup is going to facilitate that.
Yep.
Then we looked at the next generation of industry leaders, and we think that's really important, not just for the industry but also for ourselves as a farmer-owned cooperative. We need good leaders in the cooperative going forward. So we've developed a program around upskilling members in business management, and in particular in leadership. So we're outsourcing that to provide programs to upskill that. And the last component is around expansion and promoting expansion, growth on farm, but also big expansion projects, and providing members with the assistance to make those decisions.
And I think that segues us very nicely into our next question. Big, bold ideas. Time to remove the roadblocks and reimagine what's possible. And I think we've started to head that way already. So I think we'll have another Menti slide on that one. Please, as you have already, enter your comments, ideas or questions. Beautiful. Mike, we might give you a break just for a tick. Craig, big bold ideas. What's going to drive us forwards? What do you see in your business, mate?
Well, I was going to say, government have a big role to play in this as well. Like just securing prime agricultural land be saved so that you can farm and produce food off. In my area, there's been a lot of the Macquarie Rivulet floodplain upstream from us has been buried with coal wash to build houses on, and there's only so much good land in our area, and a lot of it's been lost to development. I'm not against development. There's miles of places in Albion Park to build houses, but not on the alluvial flats. And I suppose when we were dealing with the road, it was a real highlight to us that because they went through the floodplain of our farm, when they come up to a wetland, in legislation they've got to have offsets. So every square metre of land they damage in a wetland, they've got to have a 7 metre offset somewhere else. Whereas prime agricultural land, there is none. So there's no way of protecting prime agricultural land. So the government have a big role there to safeguard.
A big bold idea about how we could maybe bring that about. And again, it's a big bold idea. Anything off the top of your head about how we could influence?
That's a hard one.
Yeah.
Because to get everyone on the same page, because people need to live places, and I think some of the flooding issues that's happened up north has highlighted that they're having a real rethink of what they can and can't do in floodplains, because government will have to start buying back houses again if they pass things.
So maybe more consultation with farmers through the decision-making process from
well, that'd be a good start.
Yep. Yeah. Right, we can live in hope.
Well, I'm going to...
You're going to pass the microphone?
Yeah.
No, I was going to say, I'm going to show tomorrow what some of the places that... Yeah.
Beautiful. Thanks, Craig. Alison, big, bold ideas to take us forwards. You've seen a lot across agriculture. What works well? What could work well?
Oh, I hadn't anticipated that question. I guess I was coming back to the story of land.
For sure.
In Australia, it was once managed by Aboriginal people. Since colonisation, we've been at land use change for a very, very long time in this country. Land is a finite resource. It's also scarce, and it's becoming scarcer because of the competition required for everything. So that goes for carbon offsets, it goes for existing uses, it goes for new uses. So how do we accommodate those competing uses? I come back to, we essentially live in a free market, and individual property rights come into play, and so what is the role of government in those big, I guess, future questions, because the way we live today will be very different to the next 50 years as well. No answers in what I've just said. I'm just pointing out a bit the obvious, but I think being more mindful, I guess, of what's important, and how we can prioritise some of those competing uses. Where have I seen it work well? Let me ponder on that, and I might...
We can come back to you.
Yeah, I might talk about it around the bar tonight.
Over a glass of milk.
Indeed.
Okay, Michael, I think from what I've seen of your family and your business, turning challenges into success through big, bold ideas is nothing new. What's your sense on where we can tip a bit more energy into the industry for big, bold ideas to move us forwards?
Yeah, I know we've heard a little bit about government and how they can help, and I think that's where it gets back to a unified or an alignment around the industry, because we can't have those conversations. And I even probably question a little bit around locking up land. I think we've got to create the opportunity that happens, and it's happened for a long time. There was a lot of dairy farms through this and up where we farms, southwest Sydney, there's not that many left, but there's been opportunity, especially for us, to go and invest elsewhere because we've seen the value in dairy. So, and that's forever going to happen. And I think making sure, and it was proposed there a couple of years ago around how to create a wider industry voice. And I do think it's important that we revisit that around how do we create that voice there that really can negotiate on behalf of all dairy farms about the pathway forward. Because I do continually see opportunity there around the dairy business. I think in terms of regulation, and I talk more from a processor level, where we do compete on the global stage. A third of the milk that's produced in Australia goes into drinking milk, and the rest is manufactured. And then you know, we saw it in the press not long ago with US butter coming in. We've got to have a better system there that understands that flow, because we are a global player, and we've seen that with some of the tariff discussions and how that all flows around. So we've got to be able to be responsive to that. So I think I would say, to step back, what is the big, bold idea? I'd say we've got to create a more clearer, unified voice for the industry that promotes the whole business sector.
Thank you, Michael. Excellent insights. Jane.
Excellent. It's time to promote dairy, not just milk. Talk about what dairy farming is worth. Explain why dairy farming is not what it used to be, and for good reason. Animal welfare, genetics, nutrition, environment, soil, water and air quality, farm and food safety have all been improved. The dairy story needs to be one of prosperity, not simply sustainable or profitable. We need to tell our story of how to invest, innovate, address climate challenges, care for our cows, explain how and why we work to ensure we produce high quality milk. The knowledge of dairy is often confused and historical and can often be misleading. If we are to prosper, grow, and all need to consider what we do and say, even if it's a private conversation, because it matters. Consider what the public believes and what is important to them. We focus on the future, but we are often stuck in the past. It's confusing. Industry has moved on with technology, science, research and innovation that has progressed the industry, but our narrative has not kept up. If we are going to operate in the future, there are some things that need to change, not because somebody says so, because it is a better way to operate. Our story is our story fit for the future? There has to be an understanding of value all along the supply chain so that we can all share in the prosperity with long-term commitments, respect and innovation. We have to consider and be thoughtful of each other by treating each other with respect and understanding, not just in words but in actions. If we recognise the value of dairy, we have to learn to work together to create value that is prosperous and future focused, promoting, supporting and encouraging dairy farmers to progress, recognising their worth by finding ways to add value to their business. It's time. Technology, investments, innovation, management and experience. We show and tell why we are worthy and why we should never be cheap and why we are always great value. If we fail to tell our story, we will limit our success, longevity and prosperity. Our failure will not only affect dairy farmers, it will affect all of industry. Communities, health and welfare. It will be difficult and unpredictable with stronger boom-bust cycles. We need to refresh the Australian dairy story and tell one that needs to be heard. And then going back to land conflict, if we had taxation reasons not to sell off our blocks, that policy would probably help, because we have blocks on our farm that we could sell off, but we choose not to.
Yep.
But if regulations said if you don't use it, you lose it, we'd use it.
Yep, for sure. That's a really good insight. Again, Jane, thank you for those thoughtful, critical comments. Mike Jeffrey, we're going to come back to you now for your thoughts on this question, and again, both from your own family farming business and your view on the landscape with Norco. Big, bold ideas, and I suspect you're already into some of those at Norco, aren't you? As you've touched on.
Yep, thanks, Greg. Look, I think there's a whole host of different areas that we need to be really conscious of when it comes to the industry and the way it's portrayed, and in particular the way we attract young people to the industry. One of the issues that we started to address at Norco was declining farm numbers, and obviously farm profitability, milk price, industry confidence, all those things come into play to decision making when people ultimately leave the industry. But if there's a keen new generation coming through, and if the industry and their own farms or their family farms can cater for their expectations, so we're talking about a whole new generation with a whole new range of expectations, and that's where the science and the technology really comes into it, and the creation of wealth and lifestyle attributes. If we can address all those things to keep the young people engaged and get them invested in the industry, then that's a big part of the problem solved going forward, I think. And then when it comes to production systems so that's why the succession side of it was our first stage.
Yep.
And then the production systems, intensification, growth in individual farms became a next focus, and that's what we're about to roll out now, is some programs to really encourage people to think about those bold expansion plans. What's stopping me going from 350 cows to 900 cows? What do I need to do? How do I go about it? So we're looking at programs to provide assistance in that decision making and investing in that part of our members.
Good stuff, Mike, and I note that's kind of the sense of some of the commentary that's come in already about, again, attracting and retaining people within the industry, but also about talking up this wealth narrative. I might come to you, Craig, because I know that's something that you guys don't seek the spotlight on this, but running a good business has been central to staying in business, but also staying ahead in business. So tell us a little bit more about, again, it's just something you do with your family in business, but I think it's a real standout opportunity, isn't it, is good business management.
Yes, exactly. I suppose, like I previously mentioned, we had the road come through. We had John Mulvaney as our dairy consultant, and he went through our figures, and he was quite impressed with what we had achieved, and also the benchmarking. We also undertook that, and we were very successful in that area as well. We're up with the top 5% of that. So, but John, I think one of his comments was, my brother and myself are very tight-ass farmers because we spend money wisely on things that made our business work. So, like I said, sourcing feed at the right price, with building connections, and repro. That was one of the things that really highlighted our success, was I suppose getting repro right, so that it made a huge impact in our business. Yeah. And I suppose my role now, I've got my two sons and my nephew coming through, is to nurture them, just be a mentor, to let them take up the reins and make mistakes and be able to put their spin on it, and me be sort of in the background. So that's what's looking forward for me, is that's my role, I see, as a dairy farmer.
Thanks, Craig. And I actually think you'll find John Mulvaney had a technical phrase for what you just described. It was TAF. He used to talk about TAF, T-A-F. So you guys have that in volumes for sure. Well, in the last few minutes, I just want us to maybe step it up a level and again reimagine what's possible. So the big settings within the industry, and maybe a comment from each of you. And I've heard this sense of about industry being a bit more aligned from Michael. Alison, I've heard you mention the need for industry to have their priorities straight. So when we are engaging with government, that there's one clear, consistent message. Jane, I've heard from you about the need to tell better stories and for us to embrace our industry and be proud of it. And Mike, we've heard from you about Norco just taking control of their own destiny. So in the closing remarks, what do you see as the number one or two things that you think we really need to lean into as an industry here in the room to help remove the roadblocks and take us forward? So Mike, maybe starting at your end.
Thanks. Tough question, and I'll probably get a number of people disagree with this, but just thinking about it right here and now, I think we've got to get back to the day where we've got everybody in the tent.
Yep.
You know, we've got great organisations like DRF doing, you know, the science side of things and research. We've got advocacy groups. We've got a variety of industry groups. And then on the processing sector, you know, we've got multinationals and big corporates and ourselves as a cooperative. And now we've got retailers involved in processing. So we've got to get everybody in the tent.
For sure, I like it. Now you can either agree or disagree, by the way, as we move through the panel. So Jane, we might come to you next, just to switch it up a gear. You've prepared something, have you?
Of course.
Right.
The secret to getting ahead is get started today and together. I've got it listed here, but it's just basically we need to work together. We need to tell the whole story of the dairy industry, not just the milk that we sell. It's what we do for our communities, how we look after our soils and our environment, how we do things that no one measures and no one is accounted for. I often say if somebody complains across the fence about spreading lime or something, what's that toxic chemical or whatever it is? And I say, oh, it's just lime. It'll be all right. And I said, well, if we're not here, who else
Tells the story.
is going to be there? And then they go, oh, no, we'd rather you guys stay. So, I mean, you've just got to tell them what they need to know.
Yep.
That we're valuable beyond what we are. We're more than milk, and dairy is more for everyone.
Storytelling, right?
Yep.
Good stuff. Michael Perrich, over to you. One or two things.
Yeah, I'm not going to add on top of what Mike and Jane said, but absolutely agree with that, and I'll probably just build on it a little bit. I've travelled into the US a fair bit, and you even look at the farm lobby group over there. They are business people that happen to run farms, where I get a sense in Australia, and it's probably, call it the tall poppy syndrome. I think if we present ourselves as doing well, our customers are going to pay less because they think they're doing okay, I don't need to pay as much. But actually, the customers that you deal with want to see that everybody is doing well, and they're happy to partner and work with us. So I think we've got to get ourselves, we've got that romantic image around farming, and there's a balance around how do you make sure you're getting the right message there. But we've got to present ourselves. Dairy farmers are business people that just are involved in dairy farming. We have more technology than nearly any other agricultural production facility. We employ a lot of people. We have probably more capital, and that is probably one of the challenges there around getting capital. But we have an exciting industry that technology is right at the forefront. So how do we promote ourselves and work together? Because we can't deal with water regulation, we can't deal with all these other regulation unless we are together getting a consistent voice.
Business people who farm, I love it. Alison, we might come to you next.
And I think it's been reflected through the discussion, but also who's in the room. And I think it's about valuing the diversity.
Sure.
Because I think the different opinions in the different sectors, when they come together, strengthen, I guess, the sometimes can strengthen up the focus. I'd also just think it comes back to a piece of graffiti I saw years and years and years ago, and it quite simply is a message that says dare to share. And then you take that forward, that attitude.
Love it, love it. Thanks, Alison. And Craig, because you're in a family farm and been married a long time, you told me earlier you never get the last word. So today I've given it to you. Final thoughts, mate?
Trouble now.
I don't know how to follow that one. In our situation, like I said, we're under the microscope, but our council would like to see green open fields in the area because it sort of breaks up Lego land, so they're quite happy for us to try and be caretakers of the land. And we sort of got to get that image out there that if we don't look after our land, we don't make any money. So it's in our best interest to be proactive and look after our properties to be sustainable in the near future.
Beautiful. Thanks very much. Well, Paul, I'll hand back to you in a tick, but just as a very quick summary, Mike mentioned everyone in the tent, right? A good philosophy. Michael Perrich, business people who farm. Jane, the importance and power of storytelling. Alison, the strength in diversity and the value in diversity, and daring to share. And again, Craig, just finishing off with you, as the rain has come down the background, the value of green spaces. We are the caretakers for sure. Ladies and gentlemen, big thanks for our crew. Over to you, Paul.